Introduction to World Religions and Belief Systems.
Magandang morning, mga estudyante, ng ESTI, PCIC, at ESE. We will now proceed with our lesson for today. Unit 1. The Nature of Religion and the Abrahamic Faiths. In this chapter, we are going to tackle the nature of religion, the meaning of religion, and the key elements of religion. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to 1. Explain the etymological meanings of the term religion. 2. Identify and explain the key elements of religion. Let us now proceed to the next slide. Let us first explore our own ideas and views by answering the following questions. You may write down your answer on a clean sheet of paper or on your notebook. 1. What would you define a religion? 2. What characteristics do you think are common to all religion? 3. What do you think is the value of studying the different religions in the world? 4. Identify 3 benefits of having a religion. 5. Identify 3 benefits of studying the different religions in the world. 6. What do you think is the relationship between spirituality and religiousness or religiosity? You may pause this video while answering these questions. Just click play button on your screen to proceed to the next slide. Lesson 1. Understanding religion. What is religion? There are at least 3 closely related accounts on the etymology of the term religion. According to the first account, the term comes from a Latin word that means to tie or bind. Some identify this Latin word as religar, Palmer 2004, 14, while some identify it as religio, Saussure and Skrzypiska 2006, 1259. In any case, this etymological meaning of religion, to tie or bind, indicates the 2 objectives of religion: first, to bind humanity and the divine together, and second, to bind humans into a community that is bound with the divine. The second account states that the term religion consists of 2 Latin words, name, re, which means again, and leg, which means to join or connect, Muller 2010, 5. Religion, based on the combination of these 2 Latin words, therefore means to join again, or to reconnect. And what is being joined again or being reconnected, in this context, is humanity and the divine, or human world and the sacred world. This meaning of religion suggests that there was originally a unity between the human world and the sacred world which was somehow lost or strained. And religion is the way for humans to recover or re-establish that unity. According to the third account, the word religion derives from the Latin word religar, which indicates respect and care for both the natural and supernatural worlds, Palmer 2004, 14. This further suggests that a primary concern of religion is to provide guidance on how humans ought to live. It can be observed in these 3 etymological accounts of the meaning of the word religion that religion serves as a bridge between human world and the sacred world. Accordingly, the etymological accounts suggest that a higher purpose in human living is unity with the divine, and religion provides the necessary way or guidance to accomplish this purpose. Scholars from different disciplines have defined religion in varying ways, though some similarities and intersections can easily be observed in these definitions. These definitions resulted from their studies of religions using the lens or perspectives of their own respective disciplines, which include sociology, anthropology, philosophy, theology, and religious studies. Examining these definitions will give us an idea of the different aspects of religion, as well as of what is essential in a religion. Here are some of these definitions, as quoted in House 2006, 15. 1. Friedrich Schleiermacher. 1768 to 1834, the essence of religion consists in the feeling of absolute dependence. 2. James Martineau. 1805 to 1900, religion is a belief in a divine mind and will ruling the universe and holding moral relations with mankind. 3. C. P. Thiel. 1830 to 1902. Religion is that pure and reverential disposition or frame of mind which we call piety. 4. F. H. Bradley. 1846 to 1924. Religion is the attempt to express complete reality of goodness through every aspect of being. 5. James Fraser. 1854 to 1941. Religion is a propitiation or conciliation of powers superior to man. 6. Emil Durkheim. 1858 to 1917. Religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things which unite into one single moral community. 7. Rudolf Otto, 1869 to 1937. Religion is that which grows out of, and gives expression to, experience of the holy in its various aspects. 8. Paul Tillich, 1886 to 1965. Religion is a state of being grasped by as preliminary and which itself contains the answer to the question of the meaning of our life. 9. J. Milton Yinger, 1916 to 2011. Religion is a system of beliefs and practices by means of which a group of people struggle with the ultimate problem of human life. 10. John Eck, 1922 to 2012. Religion constitutes our varied human response to transcendent reality. 11. Ninian Smart, 1927 to 2001. The 6 characteristics of dimensions of religion are the ritual, the mythological, the doctrinal, the ethical, the social, and the experiential. 12. Peter Berger, 1929 to 2017. Religion is the establishment through human activity of an all-embracing sacred order, that is, of a sacred cosmos that will be capable of maintaining itself in the ever-present face of chaos. 13. James C. Livingston, 1930. Religion is that system of activities and beliefs directed toward that which is perceived to be sacred in value and transforming power. 14. Roy A. Clauser, 1937. A religious belief is any belief in something or other as divine. Divine means having the status of not depending on anything else. 15. Roland Robertson, 1938. Religion pertains to a distinction between an empirical and a superempirical being subordinated in significance to the non-empirical. The following videos explains the origin and history of religion.
Experience taught Stone Age people the difference between what poisoned them and what satisfied their hunger. Their minds gathered empirical realities necessary for survival. They did the best they could in drawing conclusions about the world beyond them. They assumed that they were at the center of the universe, which they saw as flat, small, and under the sky. They called themselves the people, and thought that strangers were creatures of another sort, less human than they. They believed that if they ate the flesh of a strong beast, they might acquire its spirit. Or, if they ate a portion of the body of a leader who had died, they might acquire his special qualities. They assumed that the sun and moon they saw moving across the sky were animate beings. A face of a dead person they knew and recognized in the peculiar shapes on the face of a rock was associated with the living spirit of that person dwelling within that rock. With no defined difference between spirit and materiality, they believed that in preserving a corpse, they were also helping to preserve the spirit of one who had died. They believed that a body went limp at death because the spirit that had been within it had left it for the invisible world of the spirits. They felt no urge to meld these ideas of spirits and materiality into a consistent picture. People correctly associated their own movement with their will, and they believed that all movement was the product of will. They saw insects as moving by will. They assumed that plants grew because of a will within. They saw the sun, moon, and stars as closer than they really were, and as moving by will. For Stone Age people, will was spirit, and they saw the world as filled with many spirits, or to use another word, gods. They saw gods within everything that moved. There was a god within the wind and another god within the rivers. A god in the ocean made the waters rush to the beach and then retreat. The sun was a god. They saw their reflection in water and believed that what they were seeing was their spirit. People attributed much that happened to the spirits and to magic. Lightning, thunder, rain, the tides, procreation, and fire were all magic. And fire was not only a product of magic, it was a manifestation of spirit. Their view of the world came to them with invented stories. These were stories that were told and accepted without recognition of a difference between fact and fantasy. Every society had its stories about creation, each with a different twist. Storytelling described their world in a way that they could understand. There were stories of a god having created them out of earth, and a story, among others, that they had been created from the bark of a tree. An occasional exception to universal order might be described as the work of a demon spirit, an evil of sorts. There were stories about evil and dread, a story with a threatening demon of some sort producing more excitement than one without danger. People believed that if the gods could perform magic, so too could they. The earliest form of religious ritual was an attempt at magic through imitation, such as painting a face on the belly of a pregnant woman in hope that the magic of the drawing would encourage birth. Hunter-gatherers were trying to get by rather than to change their world. They tended to believe the world would always be as the gods had made it. They had no sense of social progress or image of humanity's capabilities beyond their abilities. The imagination of those who had a biological potential for genius and those of normal intelligence were limited by their culture. Had it been otherwise, modern society would have appeared much sooner.
For most of history, religion has been a central focus of human concerns, but now, in large parts of the developed world, it's become a sideshow or even an irrelevance, because it's been declared untrue by the most powerful force of our age, science. But debating whether religion is true or not may not in the end be the most important move we can make. It's also key to understand what needs have traditionally driven people to religion, so we can go on recognizing and answering these needs, even outside a supernatural structure. 4000 BC, Arnhem Land, Australia. An Aboriginal Australian paints an image of a serpent on a rock. The so-called Yingana serpent is a key part of Aboriginal religion. This creature and a few other associated divine serpents are worshipped for having done everything, created the sky, the lagoons, the mountains, they coloured the birds, they decreed laws relating to marriage, food distribution and death ceremonies. The serpents also generate rain and storms when anyone breaks the rules of the tribes. The belief structure of the early Australians is almost identical to that found in primitive religions pretty much everywhere around our planet. Religion has its origins in a desire to explain a very confusing world. It is a wild projection onto the natural realm of all kinds of human concerns. It becomes the focus of rituals to appease the possibly angry gods. Offerings are made in return, one hopes, for favours and kindness. Always there is the terror of death and the hope that the worst of it can be handled by an alliance with the gods. One comes away from the study of primitive religions full of compassion for the terrors and confusion that were responsible for generating these beliefs and for the frightening ignorance in which our forebears were fated to live. But one also comes away with respect for our own psychological ingenuity, for our cleverness in telling ourselves stories to calm ourselves down, hold the community together, and deal with the unknown. 400 BC, Kushinagar, India. A kind philosophical Indian prince, Siddhartha Gautama, meets his end. His other title, Buddha, means awakened or enlightened one. He teaches his followers, of whom there will soon be millions, to expect constant suffering in life, but also to strive to detach themselves from their immediate circumstances and the anxious spasms of what Buddhists call the monkey mind, through reflection and meditation. In Buddhism, we see a characteristic attempt of religion to calm the minds of followers in relation to anxiety, poverty, illness, and death. The task of religion is to keep us hopeful, to stop our minds caving into terror, and to hold our hands through the worst, last days of our lives. 1025 AD, Song Dynasty, China. A sculptor produces this representation of a beautiful, kindly female Buddhist deity called Guanyin. Guanyin is the Buddhist counterpart to the Virgin Mary, and she fulfills a similar role as this lady, that of hearing us in our distress, meeting us with tenderness, and strengthening us to face the tasks of life. The centrality of these maternal figures in both Buddhism and Christianity suggests that mature adult lives share moments of terrible and lacerating self-doubt, which breed longings to recover some of the security and coziness of childhood. Being reasonable and adult doesn't always work. In our worst crises, we regress. We want to be held and understood and forgiven like we were 5 years old. All this religion knows, honours, and does not mock us for. 1133, Winchester, England. The poorest people in the parish of Winchester in southern England take up residence in the Hospital of St. Cross and the Almshouse of Noble Poverty. This is the oldest charitable institution in the United Kingdom, founded by the Bishop of Winchester, who has read the Gospels thoroughly and taken inspiration from Jesus' command to treat the poorest with special dignity. Though destined for the poorest, the almshouses are built on the scale of an Oxford or Cambridge college, with the most beautiful, noble architecture of the day. The almshouses are a typical example of a theme found in all world religions, that of charity and of the duty of the rich towards the poor. Though there may be a regressive aspect to this, religions can be praised for moderating egoistic impulses and urging the powerful to think of the defenseless. It can be tempting to think of the poor as evil and responsible for their fate, but religions ask the powerful to imagine them always as unfortunate and worthy of a special place in the divine scheme. 1543, Nuremberg, Germany. Nicolaus Copernicus publishes On the Revolutions of the Celestial Spheres. This posts a heliocentric view of the universe, rather than the geocentric version widely accepted at the time and based on the Book of Joshua. In 1616, the Catholic Church moves to declare this heliocentric theory nonsense and angrily bans Copernicus's work. However, Copernicus's revolution will not be quelled. Galileo Galilei will defend the system in a dialogue on the two chief world systems published in 1632. Again, the papacy is furious. It curses Copernicus once more and puts Galileo under house arrest. It's tempting to laugh at the Catholic Church, but the Church is trying to hold on to something rather lovely that had served humankind well, the idea of our cosmic significance, the idea that we matter, that someone out there cares. Copernicus and Galileo's theories are like the very painful end of the childhood of mankind. Their discoveries that we are but a tiny, forgotten, meaningless blue dot in the randomness of space is akin to a child discovering that his or her parents are in truth really unimportant in the scheme of things. A new existential terror will echo down the ages from these scientific discoveries. We are still dealing with it. July 1830, London, England. Charles Lyell publishes the first of 3 volumes of his geological masterpiece, Principles of Geology. The book uses new geological methods to show that the Earth is far older than was ever previously believed. The Bible had said it was 6,000 years old. Lyell says the fossil record proves it must be at least 240 million years old, based on his observation of marine fossils. Modern science now puts it at 4.5 billion years. In response to Lyell's discoveries, the British social critic and essayist John Ruskin abandons belief. He says his faith has been beaten to the thinness of gold leaf by such rock-bound evidence. If only the geologists would leave me alone, he writes, I could do very well, but those dreadful hammers, I hear the clink of them at the end of every cadence of the Bible verses. Science now makes it almost impossible for any intelligent person to believe in the Bible as literally true. 1835, Tübingen, Germany. 27-year-old David Friedrich Strauss publishes the first edition of the first volume of an epochal work, The Life of Jesus Critically Examined. Strauss advances the view that it doesn't matter whether or not Christ really was the Son of God, or worked miracles, or came back from the dead after being crucified, because what's important about him is the moral example he gives. His generosity, his immense tenderness to the weak, his commitment to forgiveness. You must forgive your brother 7 times 70, he notes. His humility, he lived as a carpenter, had a simple life, lived amongst the poor. Strauss initiates a new way of looking at religion. It isn't a true description of how the world actually is. It's something humans have invented to comfort themselves in highly valuable and important ways that deserve our selective reverence. 1885, Amsterdam, Netherlands. A new national museum, the Rijksmuseum, officially opens. The architect, Pierre Cuypers, has spent his career designing and restoring churches, and it shows. The building is quickly dubbed a new cathedral devoted to art, with its stained glass and ecclesiastical solemnity. The museum is one of many to open in the second part of the 19th century. It's the result of a widespread panic as to what can replace religion now that belief is in decline. One leading answer is that culture can replace scripture. The argument is that art can achieve for us many of the things that religion once did. It can be a guide, a source of consolation, a teacher of wisdom and compassion, a reminder of our better nature, and something that can, imperfectly, but still to a real extent, reconcile us to our mortality. 2006, Oxford, England. An English biologist, Richard Dawkins, publishes The God Delusion. Dawkins argues that religion is intellectually wrong and delusional, and therefore should be removed entirely from public culture, though Dawkins just about stops from saying that people should be prevented by law from being religious in private, but only just. Dawkins's mocking view of religion coincides with deep disquiet about militant Islam in the West. The murderous ways of fringe Muslim groups seems to be Dawkins's real target. Religion just comes to seem like something a bunch of mad people could ever be interested in. Dawkins insists that reasonable people can find all the consolation they need in science and medicine. The doctor can replace the priest, the welfare state can replace charity, and the laboratory can replace rituals and ceremonies. For the rest, we have television and the news. The needs that religions answered were real and important, and despite science and TV and theme parks and cancer treatment centres, we still have many of these needs. We still have to die, we still need to be comforted, we still need to be reminded, in conditions of aggressive capitalism, of our duties to the community and to the poor. And we still need somewhere to take our disappointed ambitions, frustrations and sorrows. Religion may well have been a deep illusion, but it was an important illusion that we need to understand with sincere depth and compassion in order to know how to create functioning secular societies in our own time.
Let us now talk about the key elements of religion. Though the human desire and effort to unite or reconnect with some sacred or divine reality may be an essential feature of religion, as indicated by its etymology and the definitions of some scholars, religion, as commonly understood and practiced, has other important features. In identifying the key elements of religion, two things need to be noted. First, these elements are limited to those shared by the particular religions that we shall examine in our future discussion. This means that there is no claim that these key elements are final and complete, for once we include other religions, other elements may have to be included or some of the elements in our list may no longer be applicable. Second, not all of these key elements are essential in the sense that not all particular religions have all of them in the same degree. Most of these elements are shared by these religions, but some of these elements are shared only by most of them. In any case, in what follows, we shall look into the following key elements of religion: worldview, spiritual world, sacredness, community, central stories, rituals, ethical codes, artistic expressions. Let's talk about worldview. Religion contains a worldview. A worldview refers to a set of beliefs that is both coherent and comprehensive. As a coherent set of beliefs forms a belief system, another way of saying the same is that a worldview refers to a comprehensive belief system. First, religion consists of beliefs. Beliefs generally refer to assertions, claims or thoughts about things that are held to be true. Beliefs are, strictly speaking, mental states that advance claims or knowledge about the world and are expressible in the form of statements or propositions. Examples of religious beliefs are the beliefs that humans have immortal souls, that there is a god or gods, and that there is universal justice in the world in which wrongdoings shall be appropriately punished and good deeds shall be appropriately rewarded, if not in this world, in the afterlife. Second, a set of beliefs forms a system when these beliefs are coherent. And they are coherent when they are consistently interrelated. Being interrelated, the beliefs in a system influence or affect one another. For instance, the belief that humans are free and thus are accountable for their actions is related to the belief that there are universal justice. Or the belief that human life is sacred, as it is a creation of God or animated by a soul, is related to the ethical principle that it is wrong to destroy a human life. And being coherent, these beliefs do not contradict one another. An example of two incoherent beliefs are the belief that there is universal justice and the belief that there is no life after death. For without an afterlife, there would be no guarantee that universal justice will be served in that all wrongdoings will be appropriately punished and all good deeds will be appropriately rewarded. Being coherently interrelated, a worldview thus has the function of giving order to our experiences and the realities in our world. Lastly, a belief system is comprehensive when it accounts for a wide range of phenomena or events in the world, or when it deals with a wide range of human concerns. Religious belief systems are comprehensive in this life for they address a wide range of human concerns. For instance, they address concerns about what makes life meaningful, what happens after death, how the world began and how it would end, how humans ought to deal with one another, why there are various human races and languages, how humans ought to regard their natural environment or its non-human members, and what is the right attitude towards wealth, authorities, spouses, money, sex, worries, knowledge, sufferings, and so many others. A set of beliefs that is not comprehensive is not a worldview. To know more about worldview and beliefs, let's watch the following videos.
This is Sasha. This is Sam. When they first met, it was just small talk about where to find the best coffee, the new high top she just bought, a book of poetry he found at a used bookstore, a new local band she discovered just last weekend, a zombie apocalypse movie he saw last night with some friends from his martial arts class, her homemade screen print t-shirt, and his favorite Chinese restaurant, which made them both hungry. So they got 2 orders of Mandarin chicken with brown rice. And then Sam opened his fortune cookie. Life's journey ends with a new beginning.
Whoa, that's deep. But in the real world, life's journey ends with an ending. When you die, you're done.
Well, yes, your body no longer works, but your soul continues to exist, don't you think?
Your soul? No, I don't believe in ghosts. We're physical creatures, material objects, just a collection of highly organized atoms. When your brain flatlines, that's it. Game over.
So you don't believe in life after death?
No. I mean, it's a comforting thought, but there's just no scientific evidence for it. I'd rather face the real world than believe in a fairy tale.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. It's best to face reality, but it may be that life after death is reality. I mean, think about it. If life just ends at death, then everything we do or say comes to nothing. What meaning or purpose can our lives possibly have?
Well, I guess my life has whatever meaning I choose to give it. I personally believe in truth, beauty, science, making the world a better place, saving the environment, freedom of speech, and, tolerance.
Yes, that's all well and good. But what does all that matter if it ends in nothingness? What are your thoughts about God?
Which God? There are millions of gods.
The God that's in the Bible.
It's been proven that the Bible is just a bunch of mythology written by ancient desert nomads. But if faith in God makes you feel good, I won't argue with that. But I personally prefer more of a rational, open-minded approach to life. Here's what I believe, Sasha. You shouldn't think anything is true unless it's been scientifically proven.
But has that belief itself been scientifically proven? Sam, you and I look at life very differently.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're from different worlds.
Not different worlds, different worldviews. A worldview is the set of lenses through which you see the world around you. It's a web of habit-forming beliefs that helps you make sense of all your experiences. Through your worldview, you interpret life in a particular way. It affects how you think, how you feel, and how you live from day to day. To understand what your worldview is, think carefully about the big questions of life. Does God exist? How did everything begin? Who am I? Why am I here? Am I living a good life? What happens after I die? Cabbages and puppies don't think about this stuff, but people do. Reflecting on these questions is part of what makes us human. In fact, every one of us has a worldview. What's yours?
There are many commonly held misunderstandings about religion. Let's focus on clearing up 3 of them. The first misunderstanding is the belief that religious traditions and practices are uniform. The truth is that religions are internally diverse. For example, there are strong debates regarding the roles of women and of sexuality in all religious traditions, including deep divisions within local religious communities. In this way, it is always problematic to make claims that begin with "Jews believe" or "Hindus believe" because of the vast diversity of beliefs within all religious traditions. The second misunderstanding is the belief that religions are static and separate from the movements of history. In fact, religions exist in time and space and are constantly interpreted and reinterpreted by believers. For example, the practice of slavery has been both justified and vilified by all 3 monotheistic traditions in differing social and historical contexts. The third misunderstanding is the belief that religions function in isolation from their political, cultural, and economic contexts. The reality is that religions are collections of ideas, practices, values, and stories that are embedded in cultures. Religion and culture are inseparable. Just as religion cannot be understood in isolation from its cultural contexts, it is impossible to fully understand a culture without considering its religious dimensions. Religion is inextricably woven into all dimensions of human experience, and a better understanding of it is crucial for meeting the variety of opportunities and challenges we face today and into the future.
Another key element of religion is spiritual world. Religion believes or assumes that there is a spiritual world or a transcendent reality, in addition to the physical, natural world that we live in. By spiritual, we simply mean non-physical or non-natural. As such, this spiritual world refers to what is sometimes also called the transcendental world or supernatural world. By transcendental and super, we mean outside the physical or natural. Being non-physical, this spiritual world is known or accessed not by means of scientific methods, generally the methods of sense observation and quantification, but by other means of knowing such as visions, revelations, and mystical, or religious, experiences. Moreover, the acceptance of its reality or truth is not a matter of having some objective evidence or method of verification. Rather, it is a matter of having some objective evidence or method of verification. Rather, it is a matter of having faith. Religion is therefore opposed to materialism, sometimes also called physicalism or naturalism, which is the belief that reality is just physical and nothing more, or that the only real world is the world that is known through the methods of the sciences. Depending on the particular religions being considered, this spiritual world of religion usually includes a god, gods, souls, angels, principles, like the law of karma, and values, among others. We earlier noted that religion contains a worldview or a comprehensive belief system. It shall, however, be noticed that it is not only religion that contains a worldview. Science, some philosophies, and ideologies, like Marxism, also contain worldviews, for they too hold a set of beliefs that are coherent and comprehensive. One essential difference, however, between the religious worldview and these other worldviews is that the religious worldview includes a spiritual world. The following video you're about to watch explains some information about spiritual world.
If you pick up the Bible, you don't have to read far before you meet the main character, God.
Yeah, he appears in the Bible's first sentence. And then later on page 1, you meet the humans.
And there you have it. The two main players in the Bible, God and humans on the stage of our world.
Well, not quite. In the Bible, there's actually a way bigger cast of characters than just humans and God.
Like who?
I mean the figures called the Elohim in the Hebrew scriptures. Angels, the Satan, demons, they're all over the story.
Oh right, spiritual beings. To be honest, I've never really known what to do with them. It's all kind of weird.
And unfortunately, almost all of our modern conceptions about these beings are based on serious misunderstandings.
All right, so let's talk about spiritual beings in the story of the Bible.
So first thing we have to do is reorient ourselves to how the ancient biblical authors saw the world. On pages 1 and 2 of Genesis, God brings order to a watery wilderness, separating the skies above from the land below.
Right, this is Earth, where we live, and then there's the heavens high above, which they saw as God's domain.
But in the Bible, these spaces are not separate. They overlap. And in fact, the Garden of Eden is described throughout the Bible as a high mountain garden where heaven and earth are one.
Cool.
So that's the world. Now it needs some creatures. God first creates and appoints the sun, moon, and stars to rule the day and night.
You mean the giant flaming gas balls in the sky?
Well, that's how you think about them. But the biblical authors, like all ancient people, saw them as heavenly creatures that are glorious, shining bright, and high above.
Which is strange. I don't think of stars as creatures.
Well, you don't. But for the biblical authors, the stars formed their categories for thinking and talking about a spiritual reality that exists alongside ours. And it's a different kind of reality, just like the sky is different from the land. And it's populated with creatures that have different kinds of bodies, shiny spiritual bodies.
Okay, so almost all ancient cultures thought of the stars as divine beings, including the ancient Israelites.
But the biblical authors make clear that these beings are not God. Rather, they're images of God. Their glory and high status is a reflection of the Creator's glory and status, and they exist to serve His purposes.
So the stars symbolize beings who are like God's heavenly staff team.
Right. Now let's go back, because after God appointed the heavenly host, He also appointed another type of creature.
The humans.
Yeah, in Hebrew they're called Adam, which sounds like the Hebrew word for dirt because that's what they're made of.
So glorious rulers above and hairy sapiens below.
But then comes the great twist. God tells the lowly humans that they are to rule all of creation. He invites them to rise above their dirty origins and share in God's glory as His partners.
So God wants to rule the world through humans and not the spiritual beings.
Exactly. This is how the poet of Psalm 8 understood the stories of Genesis. He looked up at the stars and says,
"What is humanity that you consider him? You made him lower than the spiritual beings, but crowned him with glory and divine majesty."
This is humanity's high calling, to rule creation in the love and power of God.
Very cool.
But not everyone's happy. We're introduced to a spiritual being who doesn't want humans to rule, so he tricks them into thinking that they can get divine power on their own terms.
They're deceived and they take the opportunity.
So they're banished from the Eden mountain, exiled to wander the earth and return to the dust.
This snake is bad news.
Yeah, and as you read on, you discover that he's part of a spiritual rebellion that follows the humans outside of Eden, and things get worse from here.
The humans still desire to rule, so they start a new project.
Yes, in the Bible, this is called Babylon. It's the anti-Eden, where human and spiritual rebels join together to elevate themselves back to their former glory. And so, with all that in mind, we can now appreciate the full cast of characters that we meet in the biblical story.
God, humans, and all of the spiritual beings.
Exactly. And so here's a preview of what we're going to explore. We'll learn more about God's heavenly staff team called the Divine Council. Then we'll talk about angels and cherubim, key figures in the spiritual realm. And then one particular angel called the Angel of the Lord. We'll also look at the spiritual rebels in the Bible, connected with the Satan and demons. And finally, we'll see how this whole story leads to Jesus, the one who overcomes evil, reunites heaven and earth, so that a new humanity can partner with God.
You just watched a video introducing spiritual beings in the story of the Bible.
And what's fascinating is how they all belong to a class of beings that in Hebrew are called Elohim. This is a hard word to translate, and so that's what we're going to explore next. For thousands of years, every morning and evening, Jewish people have prayed these well-known words as a way of expressing their devotion to God. They're called the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And as for you, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. We're going to look at the word soul. The Hebrew word is nephesh. It occurs over 700 times in the Old Testament. The common English translation of this word is soul, and that's kind of unfortunate. Here's why. The English word soul comes with lots of baggage from ancient Greek philosophy. It's the idea that the soul is a non-physical, immortal essence of a person that's contained or trapped in their body to be released at death. It's a ghost in the machine kind of idea. This notion is totally foreign to the Bible. It's not at all what nephesh means in biblical Hebrew. The most basic meaning of nephesh is throat. Like when the Israelites are wandering in the wilderness, they're hungry and thirsty, and they say to God, "We miss the cucumbers and melons we had in Egypt. Now our nephesh has dried up." Or when Joseph was hauled off into slavery in Egypt, his nephesh was put into iron shackles. But nephesh doesn't only mean throat. Since your whole life and body depend on what comes in and out of your throat, nephesh could also be used to refer to the whole person. Like in Genesis, there were 33 nephesh in Jacob's family, that is, 33 people. In the Torah, a murderer is called a nephesh slayer, and a kidnapper is called a nephesh thief. On the first pages of the Bible, both humans and animals are called a living nephesh, and if the life breath has left a human or animal, the nephesh remains. It's just called a dead nephesh, that is, a corpse. So, in the Bible, people don't have a nephesh, rather, they are a nephesh, a living, breathing, physical being. Now that might surprise you because most people assume the Bible says the soul is what survives apart from the body after death. And while the biblical authors do have a concept of people existing after death, waiting for their resurrection, they rarely talk about it. And when they do, they don't use the word nephesh. So even though nephesh is often translated as soul, the Hebrew word really refers to the whole human as a living physical organism. In fact, this is why biblical people can often use this word to refer to themselves, and it gets translated me or I. Like in Psalm 119, most translations read, "Let me live that I may praise you." In Hebrew, the poet literally says, "Let my nephesh live that it may praise you." By using nephesh, the poet emphasizes that their entire being, their life and their body, offer thanks to God. In the Song of Songs, the young woman constantly refers to her lover as the one my nephesh loves. And of course, love isn't just an intellectual experience, it's an emotion that activates your whole body, your entire nephesh. This helps us understand the brilliance of other biblical poets who could combine multiple meanings of nephesh in one place. Like in Psalm 42, we read, "As the deer pants for the water, so my nephesh pants after you. My nephesh thirsts for the living God." So, on a physical level, your throat can be thirsty, like a deer's, but then that physical thirst can become a metaphor for how your whole physical being longs to know and be known by your Creator. Which brings us all the way back to the Shema. To love God with all of your nephesh means to devote your whole physical existence to your Creator, the one who granted us these amazing bodies in the first place. It's about offering your entire being with all of its capabilities and limitations in the effort to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the Hebrew word for soul.
Another key element of religion is sacredness. Religion regards certain things as sacred. The sacred contrasted with the ordinary, secular, or profane. While ordinary things can be used as mere instruments to satisfy human interests, sacred things are treated with respect or reverence. Also, the value of an ordinary things depends on human interest, it is mind-dependent, while the value of a sacred things does not, it is mind-independent. A sacred things either has its own intrinsic or which has value on its own. In this consideration, we can distinguish between two kinds of sacredness, which we shall call inherent sacredness and derived sacredness. Something has inherent sacredness if it has value on its own, or it is valuable by itself, while something has derived sacredness if its value is derived from something that has inherent sacredness. Accordingly, we respect the inherently sacred because it is worth respecting on its own, and we also respect the derivatively sacred because we respect the inherently sacred that is associated with it. Our division of the sacred into the inherent and the derived can be gleaned from the following remarks by Zimbauer and Pargament, 2005, 34, on the nature of the sacred in consideration of the views of Durkheim. As stated by Durkheim, 1915, 52, by sacred things one must not understand simply those personal beings which are called gods or spirits. A rock, a tree, a spring, a pebble, a piece of wood, a house, in a word, anything can be sacred. Thus the designation is not limited to higher powers or immanent forces, but includes other aspects of life that take on divine character and meaning through their association with or representation of the holy. Their remarks indicate that the inherently sacred are usually spiritual in nature, such as God or gods, souls, principles, and values. While the derivatively sacred are usually physical in nature, such as spaces. Like the places of worship and the places where important events or turning points in the development of a religion occurred, which may be a place in nature like under a certain tree, a certain river, a certain mountain, and others, symbols, statues, relics, scrolls, and clothing. Moreover, this explains why the spiritual world is given a value higher than the physical world. A typical way of showing respect to sacred things is by following ethical codes associated with these things, saying prayers, offering flowers, tithing, and others. And when respect is accorded by a person to sacred things, the belief is that this person has done something good which will merit some form of reward either in this world or in the world beyond. Let's watch the following videos.
Durkheim's The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, published in 1912, is one of the foundational sociological texts. In Elementary Forms, Durkheim defines religion as a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things, that is to say, things set apart and forbidden, beliefs and practices which unite into one single moral community called a church, all those who adhere to them. Some religions have notions of the supernatural, while others do not. Some have spiritual beings, while other religions do not. But two characteristics true to all religions, according to Durkheim, are beliefs and rites oriented towards sacred things. Beliefs include myths, perhaps about the superiority, the intellect, or character of the sacred, or the laziness or the criminality of the profane. Rites are practices and actions, particularly practices that maintain distance between the sacred and the profane. Before proceeding, it is important to make note of a key point. Durkheim is concerned with creating a generalizable theory that could be used to understand all societies. Durkheim wishes to get down to the elementary ideas at the basis of religion, for there is an aspect of every religion that transcends the realm of specifically religious ideas, and religion is an eminently social thing. In other words, within the Durkheimian framework, religion is society. With that said, sacredness is not universal. A church or society bestows sacredness upon a thing, which may be a person, a group, or an object such as a tree or mountain, by setting it apart and performing acts to keep it separate. What is sacred to one group may be insignificant to another. Similarly, What is sacred today does not have to be sacred tomorrow. Lastly, and importantly, the opposite of sacred is profane. The profane is that thing from which the sacred is set apart. In Elementary Forms, Durkheim discusses the rules for engagement between the sacred and profane. The sacred can freely handle the profane, but the opposite is not allowed. Contact can occur in a variety of ways, including by gaze, by using facilities set aside for the sacred, by being in the sacred's community, or even just raising one's voice. Likewise, when the profane steps out of bound, when they touch or make contact with the sacred, they are punished to discourage others from making such a mistake. Durkheim's The Elementary Forms of Religious Life is a fascinating read. As Randall Collins writes, Elementary Forms lets us see our own society through a new lens and discover the rituals that create our own beliefs and moral boundaries. So, who are the sacred and profane in your society? What are the beliefs or myths about the sacred and the profane? What practices or rituals keep the two apart? How about considering 20th century America? Who were the sacred and profane of that society? How do you understand Jim Crow through Durkheim's framework? How have things changed? How have they stayed the same?
We know that there are many places considered holy or sacred even throughout the world, but how do you narrow down which you want to visit? That is, if you're interested in visiting them, which you totally should be. You could learn something about other cultures and have some fun while doing it. We could all use that, right? Time to get down to the nitty-gritty. This is Awesome Sacred Places Around the World. Number 10. Blue Lake. You can find this literal blue lake in New Zealand's Southern Alps in Nelson Lakes National Park. It's fed by a small upper part of the Sabine River and is drained by the west branch of the same river. The lake is the clearest natural body of fresh water reported thus far, and a study done in 2011 declared the visibility to be 230 to 260 feet, whereas the previous record holder measured visibility of just 207 feet. That's by no means unclear, just less clear than Blue Lake, okay? It lay within the tribal area known as Rohe and was traditionally used for ceremonies for releasing spirits of the deceased and cleaning the bones so that they could begin their journey to the afterlife. An exciting fact is that Blue Lake was actually only used for males. A lake named Lake Constance was used for females. It's a beautiful place, and yes, we would visit. We'll take anything with that kind of scenery. Number 9. Hill of Crosses. This cluttered and haunted-looking and at the same time mesmerizing and awesome-looking place can be found in Lithuania and is a place of pilgrimage for Catholics of all kinds. There are tons and tons of crosses, crucifixes, statues, carvings, rosaries, and effigies at the site that have been brought in by those who have made the pilgrimage over the years. Estimates put the number of crosses here at around 55,000 in 1990, and only 16 short years later, that number had swollen to approximately 100,000 in 2006. The location signifies the peaceful, steady endurance of Lithuanian Catholicism, even though it's faced many a threat throughout the course of history. If you want to saunter through hundreds of thousands of crosses and other religious items, this is the place for you. If you'd like to see and feel some solidarity with and connect with the Lithuanian Catholics, this is probably the place for you too. It's a little claustrophobic for us, though. Number 8. Ganden Sumtsenling Monastery. This remarkable place is the most significant Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Yunnan Province in China. It was built way back in 1679 and is at times referred to as the Little Potala Palace and is the most important monastery in all of southwest China. It's built in a mix of Han Chinese and Tibetan styles, and at its peak, the monastery contained accommodations for some 2,000 monks, whereas today it accommodates 700 monks in 200 houses. It's a significant attraction for tourists from all over, as it's a quick hour's walk from the town of Shangri-La, and it's boasting some pretty impressive structures. The city is very Tibetan and features many rocks and lamaseries, which are inscribed in Tibetan that contain Buddhist sutras and hanging, fluttering Tibetan prayer flags. It looks incredibly beautiful, and this is somewhere we would love to visit someday, wouldn't you? Number 7. Uluru. This giant sandstone rock is known as Uluru, and it's also sometimes called Ayers Rock, and it's found in the southern section of the Northern Territory in Australia. The nearest decent-sized town is still 280 miles to its northeast, and it's Alice Springs. It's considered a very sacred place to the Aboriginal people in the area. It's also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and is home to rock caves, ancient paintings, water holes, and an abundance of springs. It's undoubtedly one of Australia's most recognizable landmarks, and stands 1,142 feet high and encompasses a whopping 5.8 miles. There are walking tours which you can take that will teach you about the Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, the local flora and fauna, and the bush food of the area. The mountain itself changes color from time to time, depending on the time of day and year, and it glows a beautiful red at sunset and dawn. Number 6. Sacred cenote. Alright, you know a place is sacred when it has the word in its name. Sacred cenote is found at Chichen Itza, a pre-Columbian Maya archaeological site. Sacred cenote is named Cenote Sagrado in Spanish, and that actually translates to sacred well, and it is alternatively known as Well of Sacrifice. According to some stories, the pre-Columbian Mayans used to sacrifice human beings and various sacred objects into the cenote as a sort of worship to the Mayan rain god. Cenote Sagrado was dredged by Edward Herbert Thompson from 1904 to 1910, and he recovered many artifacts of pottery, incense, jade, gold, and even some human remains, which, when tested, found that they had wounds consistent with those incurred with human sacrifice. It's thought that it actually became a place of pilgrimage for ancient Mayans who would travel to it just to make their sacrifices, either valuable or gruesome. Number 5. Devil's Tower. According to the Lakota and Kiowa Native American tribes, this is a very sacred place, and it holds high significance in their cultures. How the rock came to be formed, in their opinions, was actually based on multiple different versions of the same basic story of a bear, or bears, chasing children to the location. When the children prayed for help, the massive structure rose up around them and left the bears with no way to get them. That didn't stop the bears trying, though. Thus, you see the claw marks on the tower's sides. What we know is that Devil's Rock is a laccolithic butte in the Bear Lodge Mountains in Wyoming that sits just above the Belle Fourche River. It's 867 feet from the base to the summit and is a highly popular attraction and boasts more than 400,000 visitors per year. We aren't 100% sure on exactly how it was formed ourselves, so who knows, the Native American stories could be the real way. Wouldn't it be awesome if we found something like that out? Number 4. Yamdrok Lake. This freshwater lake in Tibet is one of the 3 biggest sacred Tibetan lakes. It's fed by lots of smaller streams and is surrounded by snow-capped mountains. The name Yamdrok in English means turquoise, given its color, and the lake only has one outlet stream that lies at its far western end. According to the mythology held by the locals, the lake itself is actually the transformation of a goddess. The most massive power station in Tibet is the Yamdrok Hydropower Station, which sits at the lake's western end near the little village of Baidi and was completed and dedicated in 1996. Lakes are considered sacred by the Tibetans, as are mountains, and they're thought to be the places in which protective deities call their homes, thus making them unique places with spiritual powers. Yamdrok is one of only 4 extra holy lakes, and everyone from the local villages to the Dalai Lama himself makes pilgrimages to it. It's also believed that if the lake ever goes dry, Tibet will no longer be habitable, as it is the most significant lake in southern Tibet. Number 3. Dome of the Rock. This neat-looking place is located in the old city of Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. It was built where the Jupiter Capitolinus, a Roman temple, used to sit and was initially finished in 691 CE. The Jupiter Capitolinus was actually built on top of the seat of the second Jewish temple. So this is like a temple inside a temple. Inside a temple. This shrine is one of the most ancient extant works of Islamic architecture. The dome is built high above an actual rock at the center of the literal Dome of the Rock, which is called the foundation stone, as seen in this picture here. The stone is also sometimes referred to as the Peace Stone, considering its hole on its southeastern corner that actually leads to a cave that's beneath the foundation stone, called the Well of Souls. In Judaism, this is the holiest location, and millions of Jews all around the world pray facing the direction of the foundation stone. The stone is said to be from what the entirety of Earth was created, and that the rock was the first part of our planet to come into existence. Number 2. Batu Caves. Let's travel to Malaysia and check this place out. Wow, this place is beautiful, and you can find these caves and cave temples in Gombak, Selangor, Malaysia. The name comes from a river that flows past the hill, called the Sungai Batu. It's a limestone hill and is the 10th such hill from Ampang. It's a supremely famous Hindu shrine and is one of the most famous of such shrines outside of India. The The area and caves are said to be somewhere around 400 million years old and were used by the indigenous Temuan people for shelter. It was promoted as a place of worship by an Indian trader, and in 1890 he installed the consecrated statue, or murti, of Sri Murugan Swami here. Wooden steps used to be in place to reach the temple cave, built in 1920, but they've since received an upgrade, and there are now 272 concrete steps leading to the top. Temple Cave houses several Hindu shrines underneath its tall, vaulted ceiling, thus making it the largest and most well-known cave temple of the various that make up the Batu Caves area. Over 1.5 million people visit the Batu Caves yearly, so if you're trying to go, get ready to fight for some standing room. Number 1. Kelimutu. This super beautiful, super impressive looking volcano is located in Indonesia, near the small town called Moni in Central Flores Island. The mountain has 3 separate crater lakes that are all different colors. The science behind this is actually relatively well known. The oxidation reduction status differs, and the levels of various major elements like manganese and iron are higher or lower in each lake. Thus, each lake changes its colors entirely independently from the others and has its own connectivity to the activity of the volcano that it sits on. The colors change relatively rapidly, with 6 color changes happening between January and November 2016 alone. Locals here believe that the magnificent lakes are a resting place for their ancient ancestors and that the colors of the waters correlate and correspond to the spirits' moods. How incredible. Would visit for sure. Did any of these gorgeous locations pique your interest? If you enjoyed this video, like it, comment below, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Keep your eye out for more cool videos coming your way soon.